Welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to be looking at using Sketchbook again, but this time we're going to be using the Flipbook features. And what this does is it allows us to create a basic traditional 2D animation. So I'm going to be going through this so it's appropriate for beginners, looking at all the tools and some of the functions and just looking at how we'd go about creating a very basic animation for now. So with Sketchbook open, one more caveat is that the Flipbook animation stuff only actually comes part of the Pro subscription. So that's just an important FYI. So let's jump in. Now let's go to File, New, Flipbook, and we're going to jump to an empty sequence. Awesome. So in here, this is where you set up your scene. I'll just use that because that's my default screen size. And in here we have FPS, frames per second. I think by default it starts on 24, but considering we're doing traditional animation, I think that's asking a lot. So I always like to drop it down to 12. You can get enough of the picture with 12, and a lot of the classic games like that you might have played on the SNES or Mega Drive would run around a similar frames per second, even though they were using sprites. And down here we have number of frames. Mine is currently set to 2. I think by default, again, it's something ridiculous like 240. Again, asking a lot of the artist. But I'm going to set mine to 2 so that we can actually have a look at how we'd go about adding more and tweaking as we're changing. From what I've seen so far, the frame rate, the frames per second, can't be modified once you start editing, so make sure you get this right the first time. But what you could do is when you export it, if you export a PNG sequence, you can re-import it and change the time that way. Even though it's a bit of a mess about, but there's workaround. It's not the end of the world. So let's hit OK. Cool. All right. So right now we have our canvas and everything set up. Note now as well, first difference I'd like to sort of look at is over on the right hand side where we've got our layers. We've got foreground, midground, background. The background, what the background does is it works sort of different. If I were to create a quick sky here, very detailed sky, I'm sure you're all very impressed. What that would do if I were to add another frame, the sky would continue across all of them, so it repeats on all of them. It's always going to be there. So let's get rid of that. So I'm not actually going to be using one for this. The foreground and the midground then are basically the ones that'll be individual, bespoke to that current frame that you're working on. So let's go back to frame 1. Let me just delete these I added. Cool. So we're in frame 1. Down at the bottom we've got our frames. So if you'd remembered, I set mine to 2 frames at the start. That's frame 1 and frame 2. Let's have a quick look at this panel for now. So over on the left we've got 4 options. We've got to insert an empty frame, delete a frame, duplicate a frame, and add a keyframe. I'll sort of go over a bit more of those. I'll try and use them all as an example soon. And then again, we've got a bunch of options on the right hand side. For now, these ones down here, if you've ever had a sort of cassette player, CD player, MP3 player, whatever age you are, you'll know these buttons. You're very familiar with these buttons. The rest, again, I'll sort of look at in a minute. So the first thing I'm going to do is, just as an FYI to make this quick and easy, I'm going to be using the predictive stroke. I made a tutorial on that as well previously, so definitely worth checking that out. I know I would appreciate that. So let's just jump straight in and quickly create my character. That one's a bit long. Cool. And I'll go back and add more detail to that if I need to later on. But anyway, so that's my first frame. Let me give him a sort. I won't give him big club actually, like a mace or a hammer. There we go. He's got a hammer. Nothing says aggro like hitting someone with a hammer or hammering something onto a table. Cool. So let's look at adding our next frame. We've already got this grey spot here, which means we need to add a page, and this is what yours will look like. It'll have disappeared. It'll have gone invisible again. So we want to use a term and a tool called onion skinning. And basically what that is, if you imagine actually looking through a layer of onion skin, you can sort of get that low transparency, faded out effect. And this is an animation term, so you can see the previous frame that you've worked on. So over on the bottom right hand side, there's two little grey boxes. If we click the left one, we can see the frame previous. If we click the right one, we can see the frame following after. So I've turned on my left one and I can see my first frame. Cool. Happy with that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do my final position, because it's just going to be a simple animation for the sake of sort of using it. And with my previous frame, I can almost let me go a bit more forward actually. Like it's going forward to look down. Cool, so I've got my first and my last frame. This sort of way of working is using keyframes. So these are my important frames, and all the information that would be in between is usually referred to as in between. And if I press play, look at that, you can see him hammering away. Yeah, doesn't particularly look the best, but what we're going to do now is smooth it out. So we've only got two keyframes. We need to add more frames. So I'm going to press this little insert empty frame, and it's created a blank one here. I need to add a page to that. And what if I press play now? It's just the first frame flashing, because we've got this big grey bar down the bottom, and that needs to make sure you're covering all your frames. Think of that as your preview area. Whatever's you can see within there, that's the area it'll preview. Cool, so again we can see the foreshadowing onion skinning, and with both of those on, what I might quickly do is, you know what, I think I'll do this just like a nice bit of detail. So do like a 4-frame animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to create the next frame, which is going to be that sort of in-between point between the two of them. My canvas is not long enough. I'm going to actually have to increase my canvas size, and I can't. But it'll be fine. I'll scale it all down soon. And let's find where my legs are. Roughly want the same position. Cool, and now if I press play, it'll look like a smoother action. And I'm going to want a 4th frame. So I'm going to do the same thing. Press the empty one, add the canvas to it, and drag out my bar. You'll notice that the side of these are 1s. If I change this to, like, you know, say up to 10, I mean, don't need 10, and this one can go up to 10. This shows the previous 10 frames and the next 10 frames. So if I turn this off, what we can see now is we can see I've got 2 frames before, and on this layer I can see all those layers. I can see both of those frames. But I only actually want to, for this, I just want to see the frame before and the frame afterwards. So again, I'm going to do a similar thing. Find that sort of roughly halfway point. I've got to say I'm a big fan of the predictive, making my circles look a lot better. There's a big arm. About there. Cool. And now if I press play, an even smoother motion. So I'm not sort of done there. What I want to do real quickly is I'm going to have to bring them all down. But I'm going to turn on my background first. I want to delete all that mess I made earlier. Cool, I'm going to go down and I'm going to use a ruler to create a solid floor, just to give myself a bit of a base point. So I'm going to add a ruler, find where it goes to 0. Oops. Oh, come on. Awesome. There we go. Now I've got a floor that's going to run across everything. So I want to make sure when I'm scaling down, oops, wrong layer. I want to make sure then I'm using that as my floor. Cool. So now hit play. Oh yeah, now I can draw the top of my hammer. I was using my pen tool earlier. Oops. Cool. Alright, now roughly that is done. I mean, at this point I can go through and start adding a little bit more detail should I want to. Now let's give him some very confused looking at it now. Yeah. It's all about the eyebrows. I'm going to zoom in actually a nice amount. But either way, at this point, I can continue to, add that detail across there if I wanted to. Another thing that you could do as well to sort of signify and show motion is apply smears to this to show where the pace is coming from, where the speed is. So we can see these, like the path. What we could do is we could almost add sort of lines to show, where the hammer is coming from. And let's see how that looks with some stroke lines on there. The face is a bit weird, but ultimately that's pretty good. And another tool that we could use for this, which is quite nice, is there's some really nice smudge tools. So what we're going to actually do is I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to increase my size a bit and use these to create the smudges instead. And let me take away those a little bit. I'm just using my half eraser to get rid of these. Alright, and again, let's press play, see how it looks. Looks like a lot more speed within there. So there you have it. A basic, but complex enough traditional animation. What we've done is we've looked at all the tools utilized, sort of what we've got in front of us, and now we could easily go in there, start adding a bit more detail. Let's paint this guy's t-shirt blue. You might want to actually make his arms slightly less 2D. And then keep building up with that. But there we have it, a basic 2D animation in Sketchbook using a lot of the sort of tools that we've got available to us. If you liked that, if you found it helpful, please let us know by liking and subscribing. If you want to see any more Sketchbook animation tutorials, then again, drop a comment below and I'll happily try and respond if you've got any questions or any requests, and I'll help you out with that. So thanks for watching.